A year-long investigation by an Oklahoma City law firm has found that at least 11 current and former priests credibly accused of sexually abusing minors. Hi, I'm Ben Felder, news director of the Oklahoman, and joining me in the Oklahoman's video studios is the Oklahoman's religion editor, Carla Hinton, and investigative reporter, Randy Ellis. And Carla and Randy, yesterday on Thursday, that investigation, the results of that investigation were released by a local law firm looking at the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. A year ago, a renewed interest in sexual abuse allegations, as we saw reports coming from around the country, including in Pennsylvania. The local diocese said that they were going to take a look. They handed over the investigation to a law firm, and we saw the results of that investigation, at least some of the results from those investigations, come out yesterday. 11 names, but also accusations that the Archdiocese record keeping was at best disorganized. What did we learn yesterday? Carla.
Well, one of the things we learned was there was a sense of maybe shuttling these people or these priests to different places where they might be able to get treatment instead of calling the local law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And I guess when they returned back from treatment, many of them were sent back out into the Archdiocese to parishes. And there wasn't any attempt, as far as we know, to make sure that people were aware that something had happened, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so this is kind of a familiar pattern we've seen in other dioceses across the country of the church handling it in-house, not necessarily removing priests. We expected to see names, right? And we've seen that in investigations and reports all over the country. Right. Some victim rights groups have said 11 probably is too low, but 11 names, what does that mean to be named in this report?
Randy, maybe you could speak to that part about the credibly accused definition.
Well, credibly accused is a kind of a term of art that the diocese uses. It's not a legal term. These people, for the most part, have never been charged with crimes. They're just saying that within the diocese and their investigation, after looking at the allegations and reviewing them, they came to the conclusion that they believed the allegations against them were credible. In some cases, they had admissions from the priests that they did these things. In other cases, it was denied, but they had multiple complaints that they felt warranted the finding that they were credibly accused. But again, this is a church term rather than a legal term.
Yeah, and pretty significant to name people in a report. That means that there is some evidence or credibility to the accusations. I want to talk to you about the record-keeping aspect that you wrote about, but first let's talk about the response from the Archdiocese and the story that you both wrote for Friday's Oklahoman. I mean, the headline is, quote, from the Archdiocese, "You trusted us and we failed." I mean, it did not look good for the church.
Right, and Archbishop Paul Coakley acknowledged that this was a taint, if you will, on the church. He apologized to parishioners, obviously to survivors, and he even went so far as to say anyone who has been sexually abused by anyone representing the church. He also apologized to his fellow priests, whom we call brothers, because they have now been subjected to ridicule and scorn, because of their vocation. So he tried to talk to lots of different groups, and because he knows there's a ripple effect to this sort of thing.
Yeah, this was a 77-page report that you both spent some time with reading through yesterday, and I know there's going to be some additional stories in here in the future. Your initial reporting also indicates that this report says that the record keeping by the church was also faulty, like I said, at best disorganized, and possibly active covering up with the deletion of emails and removing files. What do we find on that front, Randy?
They cite a lot of deletion of emails. Not only that, but they indicated that they had been asking from the former chancellor and the former general counsel for documents for months and months, and indicated that as recently as October 2nd, just a couple days ago, they finally got 37 boxes of documents from the general counsel, who was married to the chancellor, so that they would be, who knows which of those two records it were, but they haven't even had just to go through those. So how complete this report is, whether there's a whole lot more to come out yet, or whether it covers most of them, we really don't know yet. It's disturbing that they had to work that long to get to the access to these records that they haven't gone through yet. It raises a lot of questions. There's also talk in there that they knew at certain times that certain records were in the files that are no longer there, that reflect allegations of child abuse and evidence of child abuse.
Yeah.
So that poses a huge credibility problem for the Archdiocese that may take them a long time to try and convince people that they should have faith in them again.
Yeah, the report indicated the diocese has made some changes when it comes to preserving records, but we saw key members of leadership, deleting emails when they left. I mean, there was no unified archival system to be able to keep track of this. And these allegations would have been known, or at least there was attention on the church to know that these are issues that should be paid attention to. Carla, talk to us about the timing of this. It's been more than a year. We've written about the delay. Last year when the church announced they were doing this investigation, they made it sound like it would just be a matter of months before it came out. And then we saw reports another few months delay. And then when we hit the 1 year anniversary, we reported on the fact that it's been a year and the church doesn't have any indication on when it'll come out. This report this week came a day after the diocese in Tulsa issued its own report. Was that a coincidence, or do you feel like the two were connected?
Right. In some ways, I felt like they were connected. I thought possibly they might have decided to release both reports together. I have no way of knowing if that's true or not, but that's what I thought they might do. I do think that the General Council's not giving them the files that they were waiting on, they may have been trying to wait on those files. And in fact, in the report, they say that they just decided to go ahead and release the report anyway. So I think that Tulsa, maybe that prompted them to do it, but I do think they were just about to release it. It looks that way. We have no idea why it seemed to take so long, but it seems to be thorough. And I will say that Tulsa their report did not include as many details.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this report did. So
Yeah.
so there is that.
A lot of details in this report, and we reported in the past. You and I have reported on on questions about the church using this law firm that it has a historic relationship with, and other archdioceses have turned the investigation over to law enforcement. We'll get into that in just a second. But this seemed to be a pretty thorough investigation. Hard to initially claim that the law firm pulled any punches. Right,
and that's something that I was thinking about as I was pouring through it. It is. It's a bald or raw report, as far as I know. It doesn't look like they held anything back. I mean, there's certainly a lot of criticism in there. Yeah. And so it's obvious that the law firm acknowledges that the Archdiocese has a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Next steps, Randy. This information's been turned over to law enforcement. What are we expecting? What are we looking for?
Well, it's been turned over to the Attorney General's office. Okay. What attitude they'll take to it, I guess we don't really know yet. They're just getting it and going over it. They could do anything from impanel a multi-county grand jury to look at allegations, or they could just let it sit there. I mean, we'll have to see what their take on it is. Don't know.
Yeah. And finally, a question for both of you, and Randy, I'll let you go first. As you're reading through this report, I mean, what really struck you? I mean, what was some big takeaways after reading this report that were glaring to you?
I guess what really jumped out at me is there were instances where the Archdiocese, and I'm not talking about the current administration because this spans 40 years, but some of the earlier administrations, they really covered up things that happened. I mean, it's pretty damning. You know, at times you're going to have people behave poorly, but when the structure of government, which in this case is a church, instead of rooting it out, makes an effort to see that people don't find out about it, that's pretty disturbing. And there's several really parts of the report that bother me. Like one, there was an admission by a priest to the Archbishop at the time, Archbishop Beltran, that he had had sex with a person who was making a complaint against the church, and yet the the church financed a lawsuit in which attorneys sued this victim for defamation. So for the Archdiocese to participate in a defamation suit against a person that they know to have been a victim, that's not a good look for them.
Yeah. Carla, what about for you?
Well, the biggest thing for me, or the biggest takeaway, was the fact that they seemed to give the priests or the clergy a huge benefit of the doubt, and particularly when there were instances where these were credible accusations, or like Randy said, someone confessed, and there doesn't seem to be a thought for the minor, the child in question, the youth who were there to protect. And so I just thought that was real interesting that they decided to protect their priests, sometimes seemingly maybe at all costs.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we've known from reporting across the country, across the world over the last couple of decades that this is the sexual abuse from priests has been a crisis for the church, and as this report showed, it's impacted everywhere, including here in central Oklahoma. Well, Carla and Randy, I know you're going to continue to look at this report, continue to follow up on this as you've been reporting all year, and we'll look forward to continued coverage in the Oklahoman. I'm Ben Felder. Thanks for joining us.